Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to share this one with you today because honestly, we're going to completely dismantle and rebuild the way you study. Whether you're tackling advanced STEM courses or, say, diving into some complex legal frameworks, there's this one universal mistake almost every single student makes when they sit down to learn. They just open the book and they start reading, right? It feels productive, but as we're going to see, it's actually incredibly inefficient. So today we're exploring a highly structured pre-studying workflow called the Bear Hunter system, and we're specifically focusing on the Phase 1 priming zone. Trust me, this is literally going to change your relationship with your textbook forever.
So let me ask you, what is the very first step of studying? Well, hint, it is absolutely not reading chapter 1. When you just sit down and start reading sequentially, you immediately fall victim to what learning scientists call the cognitive switching penalty. Basically, you're forcing your brain to do two incredibly difficult things at the exact same time. You're trying to absorb completely new details while simultaneously trying to figure out how all those details fit together into a bigger picture. It's kind of like trying to build a massive jigsaw puzzle without ever looking at the picture on the box. You get overwhelmed, you lose focus, and the information just completely fails to stick.
To fix this, we use a concept from the Bear Hunter system called priming. Just think about the name for a second, the Bear Hunter. Look, a successful hunter doesn't just wander aimlessly into the woods and, hope they bump into a bear. No way. The real work, the preparation, the tracking, mapping out the terrain, all of that happens way before the actual hunt even begins. Priming is a structured preparation method you use before you even attempt to read the material. The whole goal is to locate major themes, outline central inquiries, and minimize that nasty cognitive friction we just talked about. You're basically building the scaffolding first, so when you finally do read, the information actually has a sturdy place to land.
Here is our roadmap for the Phase 1 priming zone. First, set scope. Second, skim everything. Third, keyword dump. Fourth, find core concepts. And fifth, write hypothesis.
Okay, let's dive into this with steps 1 and 2. Set your scope and skim everything.
These first two steps are super rapid fire. This is where we gather our raw materials. Step 1 is to strictly set your scope. You absolutely must use your syllabus or your exam guide as your only boundary here. Just write down the specific chapters or topics covered on your next exam. Why? Because without a really clear scope, they're inevitably going to waste valuable cognitive energy on material that just isn't relevant right now. This one simple constraint keeps you totally locked in. Then, step 2 is to skim everything at once. Now, you are not reading for detail here. You're just flipping through the pages, looking at headings, bold words, maybe some diagrams. You're just surveying the terrain to build a structural map of the chapter before you ever try to attach those specific details.
Moving right along to step 3, the keyword dump. Now, I really want to validate a struggle you might feel here because this is where we start intentionally creating a bit of a mess. During your skim, your only goal is to extract raw quantity. You want to dump 20 to 40 keywords right onto your page. Literally, just grab the words that catch your eye. Do not write down the definitions. Don't worry about making it look pretty. And most importantly, do not write them in the order they appear in the textbook. Messy is exactly what we're aiming for here.
Take a look at this scrambled mess for a chemistry student. You've got entropy, spontaneous, Gibbs, enthalpy, state, equilibrium, all just jumbled together. So why on earth do we scramble the order? Well, because writing keywords sequentially just reinforces the textbook's linear bias. Your brain will passively rely on the author's structure. But by scrambling these 20 to 40 words, you completely break that linear bias. You're severing the safety net, which basically forces your brain to wake up and realize, oh wow, I have to build my very own structure here.
And that brings us to step 4, find your core concepts.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this step is the absolute cognitive climax where the real learning actually begins. Imagine you're tasked with building a house, but your only material is a literal tree. If you try to build a sturdy structure using hundreds of scattered individual leaves, it's going to collapse immediately. It's impossible. Those isolated leaves are your raw keywords. You cannot build working memory with isolated facts. Instead, you must chunk those leaves together into sturdy branches. And those sturdy branches, those are your core concepts.
So how do we actually build those branches? Well, you look at that messy list of 40 keywords we just dumped, and you actively force them into 3 to 5 big buckets, or parent ideas. For instance, out of that messy chemistry list, a beginner might group several words under energy relationships, maybe another set under spontaneity, and the rest under equilibrium state. Will this feel difficult? Oh, absolutely. But the friction and the struggle you feel while trying to figure out which word goes into which bucket, that is exactly what builds the cognitive scaffolds in your brain. You're taking 40 overwhelming pieces of data and actively transforming them into 3 manageable conceptual blocks. It's a total game changer.
Finally, we reach step 5. Write your hypothesis.
This is the final, highly counterintuitive catalyst step of the Phase 1 priming zone, and it happens right before we open the book to actually read. You must write a 3 to 5 sentence hypothesis, guessing how your core concepts connect. Keep in mind, you haven't read the chapter yet. You will be wrong. And honestly, that is exactly the point.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that making this wrong prediction makes your brain incredibly hungry for the correct answer. When you finally do start reading the chapter, you aren't just letting the words wash over you anymore. Your brain is actively hunting for information to either confirm or correct the guess you just made. When you read something that confirms your hypothesis, boom, it locks in. When you read something that proves you wrong, well, that sticks even harder. You have successfully turned a session of passive reading into a powerful state of active error correction.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate goal of the priming phase. Instead of glazed over eyes just dragging a highlighter across a page, you become a truly active student. You're generating answers, you're testing hypotheses, and you're deeply interacting with your material. Because you primed your brain first, your actual reading session becomes highly focused, structured, and wildly efficient. Okay, let's quickly recap this entire workflow. 1. Set your scope using the syllabus. 2. Skim everything to build a map. 3. Dump 20 to 40 keywords in a totally scrambled mess. 4. Group those scattered leaves into 3 to 5 sturdy core concept branches. And 5. Write a hypothesis guessing exactly how they connect. This entire Phase 1 Bear Hunter priming zone takes about 20 minutes. And remember, this all happens before you truly read your material for the very first time. We've completely flipped the script on how to start a study session today. The research is super clear here. Preparation is just as important as the reading itself. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative challenge. If your first step is no longer reading Chapter 1, what structure will you build with your scattered leaves today? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I seriously can't wait to see how you apply the Bear Hunter system to your very next study session.